We don't accept a poor girl like you in this family. You'll never be one of us." Those were the first words Lily heard from her future mother-in-law, and they stuck like a splinter in her soul. Lily was standing in the grand living room of the Chambers estate, wearing a second-hand dress and holding a modest bouquet, while everyone else wore designer gowns and condescending smirks. She thought love would be enough, but when you're poor, and they're rich enough to own silent secrets, and even Justice Love doesn't matter. That day was supposed to be her engagement party. Instead, it became the day she lost everything, including the child she didn't even get a chance to protect. If stories of betrayal, karma, and emotional healing move you like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more true-life dramas. Lily. Tran grew up knowing the value of hard work. Her mother cleaned houses. Her father worked construction. They didn't have much, but they had pride and love. At 24, Lily met Matthew Chambers, heir to the Chambers Group, a real estate empire worth hundreds of millions. Despite their opposite backgrounds, they fell deeply in love. Matthew was kind, humble, and seemingly unfazed by their class differences. But his mother, Vivian Chambers, saw Lily as nothing more than a threat to their name, their wealth, and their legacy. She never screamed. She didn't need to. Her words sliced quietly, precisely like a scalpel wrapped in silk. Lily, blinded by love, tolerated the snide remarks, the cold stares, the orchestrated social humiliations. Until one day, a small accident on a marble staircase made her realize this family wasn't just cruel, they were dangerous. She lost her baby. She almost lost herself. And that's when Lily disappeared. But before Lily vanished, there were signs, memories, and betrayals that built the storm inside her. A storm she would one day unleash. Lily Tran was used to being invisible. Growing up in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in the outskirts of Chicago, she learned early how to make herself small, quiet during her parents' arguments, polite when the landlord raised the rent again, silent when her teachers implied she wasn't college material. But invisibility turned into defiance when she earned a full scholarship to a prestigious law school. She clawed her way through every class, every internship, every courtroom mock trial. She was the only girl in her study group without a trust fund, but she carried herself with something money couldn't buy: grit. It was during her second year of law school that she met Matthew Chambers. Tall, clean-cut, the kind of man who held the door and remembered your coffee order. He sat next to her in legal ethics and smiled like he didn't know she was wearing the same pair of shoes every day that winter. Their love felt like something out of a storybook. He never made her feel poor, never acted like she was beneath him. For the first time in her life, Lily felt seen not as someone who needed fixing, but someone worth loving. But she wasn't just marrying Matthew. She was walking into the belly of the beast. The Chambers family lived in a mansion that resembled a museum. Every inch was curated marble floors, velvet curtains. Even the air felt expensive. And then there was Vivian Chambers. Beautiful, cold, and terrifying. The kind of woman who didn't raise her voice because she never needed to. Her presence was enough to silence a room. Vivian didn't like Lily. From the moment they met, it was clear. She smiled through her teeth and spoke in compliments that cut deeper than insults. "Oh, that's such a brave choice of dress, dear. You work at the legal clinic, that's sweet. Giving back is so important when you don't have much." And always the same final line: "We're just so different, Lily." But I suppose Matthew has always liked to experiment. Matthew defended her, at first, but quietly, timidly. He didn't want to upset his mother. Lily noticed how his voice would trail off when Vivian entered the room. how he stopped holding her hand at dinners, how he avoided confrontation like it was contagious. Still, Lily told herself it would pass. She loved him, and she believed that love, if strong enough, could melt ice, even the kind Vivian carried in her veins. Until the incident at the garden party. It was supposed to be the day they announced the engagement. Lily was nervous but excited. She wore a pale blue dress and a smile she'd rehearsed in the mirror. She was ready to win them over. But the moment she arrived, she knew something was wrong. The guests, all in designer, glanced at her like she was a misplaced decoration. The champagne didn't reach her. Her name wasn't on the seating chart. And when she finally found Matthew, he was already pulled aside by his mother, whispering something that made his face sink. Then came the staircase. Marble. Curved. A showpiece of the mansion. Lily was walking down when Vivian reached out just a touch on her shoulder. A polite gesture. A grandmotherly correction in posture. But Lily's heel slipped. Her body twisted. She heard a crack before she felt the pain. And then blood. So much blood. She woke up in a private hospital room alone. Matthew wasn't there. Vivian wasn't there. A nurse handed her a release form and a brochure on grief counseling. She lost the baby. She lost the man. She lost the illusion. No one called. No one came. There was no apology. No explanation. The engagement was quietly called off. And Lily, still bleeding, still stunned, was left to pick up the shattered pieces of a future that had been stolen from her. But grief has strange timing. It blooms slowly. Days after the fall, when Lily sat in her dark apartment, replaying every fake smile, every whispered insult. Every time Matthew looked away, rage crept in, not just sadness, clarity. They never saw her as family. They never even saw her as human. She was disposable. And now they had disposed of her. But Lily wasn't done. She would rise not as the broken fiancée, not as the girl from nowhere. She would rise as someone they couldn't ignore. She took a break from law school. She moved cities, changed numbers, worked 3 jobs. She rebuilt herself piece by piece with steel in her spine and fire in her eyes. And when she finally returned to the courtroom, she made sure the Chambers name would follow her for very different reasons. Because 5 years later, when the Chambers family faced a lawsuit that threatened everything, their lead defense attorney was a woman named Lily Tran. 5 years later, Lily Tran walked into a courtroom that smelled of old wood, fresh ink, and fear. She wore a black tailored suit that cost more than her parents' monthly rent. Her hair was pinned in a sleek knot, her heels sharp, and her eyes sharper. She didn't just walk, she arrived. Her name echoed through the corridors, not as a charity case or an outsider, but as lead counsel for the defense. The firm she worked for, Rawlings and Carrington, was ruthless elite and famously selective. Getting a job there required more than a law degree. It required blood brilliance and the ability to go for the jugular with a smile. Lily had all 3. And this case, this was her moment. A lawsuit had been filed against the Chambers family by a group of tenants from one of their low-income housing properties, people who had been neglected, displaced, and silenced. Mold infestations, illegal evictions, ignored complaints. The case was a mess, and the media was eating it up. Headlines screamed real estate royalty sued for negligence, Chambers empire under fire. When Lily first saw the case assignment on her desk, her blood turned cold. The names, the signatures, the family crest at the top of the legal complaint. Chambers Group, Vivian Chambers, Matthew Chambers. The past crashed into her like a tidal wave. For a moment she felt the weight of that blue dress, the marble stairs, the silence in that hospital room. Then she smiled, because this time she wasn't a pawn in their world. She was holding the entire board. At the first pretrial meeting, the Chambers family entered the room with the arrogance of people who believed money could still fix anything. Vivian wore pearls. Matthew wore shame. Neither expected the attorney sitting across the table to be the ghost of the woman they buried 5 years ago. Lily didn't flinch. She introduced herself calmly. Lily Tran, counsel for the defense. Vivian's eyes didn't widen. They narrowed. She looked Lily up and down like appraising a crack in the wall. But Lily knew that look. It was fear dressed in denial. Matthew. He looked broken. His once boyish charm had faded into something hollow. His voice trembled when he spoke. "Lily—" She cut him off with a gesture as sharp as a blade. "This is a legal setting, Mr. Chambers. I suggest we keep things professional." Every line Lily argued, every motion she filed was calculated not just to win, but to expose. She built her strategy around the weakest parts of their empire, the paper trails they thought were buried, the bribes that were barely covered the tenants they hoped would stay silent. She gave those tenants a voice, and she made sure the Chambers' name would never recover. But fate, as always, had more cards to play. 2 weeks into the case, the prosecution added a witness, a whistleblower from inside the Chambers Group, an anonymous employee who had evidence of forged documents and evasion of safety inspections. When the identity was revealed in court, even Lily had to pause. It was James, the Chambers' longtime chauffeur, the man who used to secretly pass her ginger tea during those agonizing family dinners. The one person in that mansion who looked her in the eyes with kindness. He testified that the family had covered up multiple infractions, including the ones that led to evictions. And when asked why he chose to come forward, he said simply, "Because I watched them destroy someone who only ever tried to love them. I couldn't stay quiet anymore." The trial dragged on for months. Vivian's lawyers played every card delay tactics, character attacks, media manipulation. But Lily countered every move with calm precision, and behind the scenes, Matthew requested a private meeting with her. Against her better judgment, she agreed. They met in a quiet cafe near the courthouse. No press, no lawyers. Just 2 people with 5 years of silence between them. He looked at her like she was someone he couldn't reach anymore. "I wanted to find you," he said. "I didn't know what really happened, my mother. She pushed me," Lily said flatly, maybe not with her hands. "But she pushed me." Matthew looked like he might cry. "I loved you, Lily. I still do." She didn't answer. She sipped her coffee. He leaned in. "Can you forgive me?" She smiled softly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm not here for forgiveness. I'm here for justice, back in court." Lily delivered the closing argument with fire in her voice and steel in her posture. These families weren't just ignored. They were erased. The people responsible treated human lives as disposable. But today, the law remembers. Today, the silence ends. The verdict came 2 weeks later. The Chambers family lost. Fines in the millions. Properties seized. Reputation destroyed. Vivian didn't show up to the final hearing. But Matthew did. He stood in the back, watching as Lily walked out of the courtroom with her head high. He didn't speak. He didn't need to, because some victories don't need applause. They just need witnesses. And as the courtroom doors closed behind her, Lily braced herself because what came next wasn't revenge, it was the reckoning. 3 days after the Chambers verdict, Lily Tran received an unexpected envelope. No return address, just her name, written in delicate cursive. Inside was a single sheet of thick cream paper, the kind used for weddings and declarations. It was a handwritten letter from Vivian Chambers. "You've made your point. You've humiliated us. I hope it brings you peace. But don't forget, Lily, that you once begged to be part of this family. Some doors once shut remain closed forever. No apology. No regret. Just pride, disguised as poise, venom wrapped in velvet." Lily crumpled the letter without finishing it. She thought it would feel satisfying. It didn't. Because that was the thing about revenge. Once it was over, all that remained was the echo, but the world hadn't finished testing her. The media firestorm surrounding the Chambers case was bigger than expected. Lily's name flooded legal blogs, social justice forums, even daytime talk shows. Overnight, she became a symbol, the woman who destroyed the dynasty, that destroyed her. And that's when the messages started. Dozens of women, some anonymous, some from other elite families, some who had been through things much worse than Lily. And they weren't just congratulating her. They were asking for help. Lily read story after story of young women silenced, discredited, or quietly paid off by powerful families, corporations, institutions. Stories that mirrored her own. She had thought her fight ended with the Chambers, but maybe that was just the beginning. Still, even as she stood at the height of her career, a war raged quietly inside her. She had won, but she didn't feel free. Late one night, she walked into the same hospital where she had lost her child. She stood in front of the maternity wing, watching new mothers cradle their newborns behind the glass. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her throat tightened. Her hands trembled. 5 years, and it still cut like glass. She sat in the waiting area, tears rolling down her face, not out of weakness but exhaustion. The world saw her as fierce, unshakable. But inside she was still carrying the weight of a child. She never held a love she never got to grow. A nurse walked by and offered her water. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Lily nodded, but something cracked in her voice. "No, not yet." The next morning, she walked into her firm's senior board meeting. Everyone expected her to gloat, maybe even ask for partnership. Instead, she submitted her resignation. Gasps, confusion, objections. "You're throwing away everything," one partner barked. "No," Lily said softly. "I'm finally choosing something." That evening, Lily went back to the apartment where it all began. Her tiny studio still kept under her name. She sat on the floor, surrounded by silence. She hadn't cried like this in years. Not tears of rage, tears of release. She realized that justice wasn't just about making others pay. It was also about letting go of what they took. But her final confrontation was yet to come. Vivian Chambers showed up unannounced, in a private car dressed in all black. as if attending a funeral, the death of her empire, perhaps. Lily didn't let her pass the doorway. Vivian looked at her with eyes that had never once softened. "My son hasn't eaten in days," she said. "He still loves you, you know." "That's not my problem," Lily replied. Vivian's lips curled into a smile. "You think this is over, don't you?" "It is," Lily said firmly. "For me, it is." And then Vivian said something that chilled her to the bone. "Do you know why I hated you, Lily? Because you reminded me of who I used to be, before I learned what survival costs." For a second, Lily saw through the cracks. Behind Vivian's mask of power and cruelty was a woman who had once lost something, too. Maybe even everything. But pity has its limits. Lily didn't reply. She closed the door. Later that night, Lily wrote a letter. Not to Vivian. Not to Matthew. To her child. "I carried you for 11 weeks. And I carry you still every courtroom, every battle, every breath. I thought vengeance would heal me, but it was your memory that gave me strength. I don't need them to suffer anymore. I just need to live and honor you." She folded the letter, placed it in a small wooden box, and lit a candle. The past would always be there, but it no longer owned her. The next morning, she signed the lease on a modest office downtown, her own legal consultancy focused on helping women fight back against powerful institutions. She called it Silent No More. And as she placed the sign on the door, the sunlight hit her face. For the first time in a long time, she smiled not out of triumph, but peace. Because in that still, golden moment, Lily realized it wasn't revenge that changed her life. It was the decision to reclaim it. The smell of fresh paint and wood polish filled the small office space. Sunlight poured through the windows, casting soft golden lines across the floor. Lily stood quietly in the center, breathing it all in. This wasn't a skyscraper law firm with glass walls and espresso machines. There was no corporate plaque, no silent interns in designer heels. But it was hers. Silent. No more. The name wasn't just a mission, it was a declaration. She'd spent so many years silencing herself, swallowing insults, smiling through cruelty, wearing resilience like armor, even when it weighed her down. But not anymore. This time she would help others speak. Loudly. Legally and unapologetically. Still doubt crept in late at night. Could she really walk away from the power she'd built? From the prestige, the security, the leverage she could have used to climb even higher? Those questions haunted her. Until Aunt Mai arrived. Aunt Mai wasn't technically her aunt. She was her mother's childhood friend, the woman who used to braid Lily's hair, while telling stories about the old country. She ran a tiny corner cafe, not far from the new office. Lily hadn't seen her in years, but somehow Aunt Mai showed up with a tray of faux-tout plastic bowls and a knowing look. "I saw your face on the news," she said, setting down the food without waiting for permission. "You always were stubborn. Even as a child you refused to eat, unless the rice was just right." Lily chuckled, her defenses softening. "I don't know what I'm doing, Aunt Mai. I walked away from everything. Maybe I'm crazy." Aunt Mai raised an eyebrow and poured tea. "You walked away from a world that swallowed people like us whole. That's not crazy, child. That's brave." Lily looked at her eyes glistening. "I thought winning would feel better. But it didn't. Because you weren't winning for yourself," Aunt Mai said gently. "You were proving something to people who never mattered." She reached into her bag and pulled out an old photo Lily, as a little girl grinning in a hand-me-down dress, holding a spelling bee trophy. You were already enough even back then. The silence after those words was heavy, but healing, and Lily knew with a clarity she hadn't felt in years that she didn't need revenge anymore. She needed purpose. That week, Lily set her new mission in motion. She hired a paralegal from a domestic abuse shelter. She partnered with advocacy groups. She took on cases no big firm would touch. Her first client was a hotel maid, fired after reporting assault by a senator's son. Lily didn't just take the case, she made it a statement. Every time she walked into court, now it wasn't just about the law, it was about equity, dignity, truth. She became more than a lawyer. She became a voice for the voiceless. And with each case she fought, she healed a little more of herself. One evening, as she closed up the office, Matthew appeared outside. He looked thinner, older. His hands were stuffed deep in his coat pockets, and his eyes carried a quiet plea. "I heard about what you're doing," he said. "Helping women. Families. It's incredible." She didn't invite him in, but she didn't shut the door either. "I had to lose everything to find it," she replied simply. He stepped closer. "Do you ever miss us?" Lily paused. "I miss the idea of us. Who I thought we could be. But the real version, Namba." Matthew's face fell. "I'm sorry. For everything. For not protecting you. For not being stronger." This time, Lily looked him in the eye. "I don't need your apology. I needed me back. And I got her." He nodded slowly, like someone receiving a sentence they knew they deserved. Then he left. Quietly. Finally. Later that night, Lily stood on the rooftop of her new apartment, smaller, simpler, but warm. She looked up at the sky, letting the city buzz beneath her. She thought of her child. She thought of every version of herself, the quiet girl, the broken woman, the warrior in court. They all still lived within her, but now they were aligned, whole. She whispered into the wind, "I am not who they said I was. I am who I choose to become." And in that moment, Lily didn't just reclaim her name, she redefined it. But as Lily stepped fully into her new life, the ripple effects of her choices were just beginning to show. And not everyone was ready to let the past stay buried. Lily's legal consultancy, Silent No More, didn't just make headlines. It made enemies, especially when her second case targeted the board of a luxury hospital that turned away uninsured women in labor, one of whom died in the parking lot. Lily uncovered damning emails, internal memos, and one name among them sent a jolt through her. Vivian Chambers, listed as a silent donor, and part of the decision to quietly cut the emergency maternity budget. This time, Lily didn't just go to court. She went to war. In a live, televised hearing, she presented the documents calmly, her voice steady, her evidence airtight. And when asked if she had a statement about the board's negligence, she only said, "Women aren't asking for favors. We're demanding what should never have been denied basic decency." Vivian's name was dragged into every news cycle. Her face, once synonymous with high society charity, now became the symbol of institutional cruelty. The luxury clubs revoked her membership. Her foundation lost funding. Her name became a cautionary tale. Matthew, once the golden sea of the real estate world, couldn't escape the fallout either. When a new podcast exposed his silent role in prior eviction orders investors pulled out, his career flatlined. The last image the public saw of him was a photo alone, leaving a courtroom head-down paparazzi swarming. And Lily, she was celebrated. Not as a victim, not as a headline, but as a force. Clients flooded in. Law schools invited her to speak. Survivors wrote her letters of gratitude. But through it all, she stayed grounded. No lavish revenge party, no triumphant press tours. Her justice wasn't loud. It was permanent. Vivian once told her, "Some doors once shut, stay shut." Lily proved that some doors don't shut at all. They collapse under truth. And in the calm after the storm, Lily would leave behind not just a legacy of justice, but a message the world wouldn't forget. Lily no longer walked with armor. She didn't need it. She walked with presence, purpose, and peace. What once felt like a life shattered by betrayal had become the foundation of something stronger. Not in spite of what happened, but because of it. She turned her scars into a compass, and they led her back to herself. The world still whispered about the Chambers' downfall, still speculated on Matthew, still gossiped about the woman who brought them to their knees. But Lily had moved on. She had nothing left to prove. She spent her mornings with clients who reminded her of who she once was, and her evenings in quiet joy, reading Volunteering Living. Truly, living. The girl they tried to erase, she didn't just survive. She rewrote the story. Because dignity isn't something you're given. It's something you claim. And no one gets to define your worth but you. If Lily's story moved you, share it. Tell yours. And remember, you don't have to fight to be enough. You already are. Subscribe for more true stories of healing, revenge, and redemption.